Cool. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming along to this live kind of like open day for SRUC on the environmental management and wildlife and conservation management courses here at Edinburgh. So I'm Andrew Innes. I am the senior lecturer in charge of the environmental management, wildlife and countryside conservation management degrees here at the campus. And really today for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of the programs, kind of what goes on, the teaching, what we're all about fundamentally. So hopefully you come away with a bit of an idea about what it's like to undertake a degree with us in this particular program. And then after that, I'm more than happy to kind of answer any kind of questions that you have as well. And yeah, so hopefully I'll impart some information there, and you can see the kind of work we do and the kind of education that we deliver as well. So first of all, SRUC is a really interesting, before I get onto the course itself, SRUC is a really interesting organisation. And we're quite different from other universities and other educational kind of establishments as well, because we have this very kind of broad overview of both like knowledge generation and the kind of focus on environmental aspects, but as well as, you know, a big research arm and consultancy as well. So we're not a traditional college or university in the sense that we only provide education and bits of research, but we kind of cover absolutely everything too. And what I would really say is that it's one of the best places, and I know I'm a bit biased, but it's one of the best places in order to study environmental science, because, you know, 85% of land in Scotland is agricultural and rural as well, and that's what we specialise in. So if you're interested in working in Scotland, the UK, and even to the EU, where half of the land there is agricultural in nature, then we really have a big focus on that in terms of you know, delivering our courses around the landscapes that you're likely to be working in as well. So yeah, I think SRUC is quite unique in terms of our capacity to deliver that. So okay, let's get on with the presentation and the two programs. So there's two programs that run out of the Edinburgh campus, and that's what we're going to focus on here at SRUC. The first one is environmental management, and the second one is a wildlife and conservation management. So I'll talk about environmental management mostly because it's the one that we carry on for the full 4 years, and then I'll talk about wildlife and conservation management a little bit more. So the environmental management one here, I'll just get my wee laser pointer. Has a very broad focus on the environmental and ecological sciences. So we're not just focused on conservation, we're not just focused on applied ecology, but we're also really interested in the kind of social and economic aspect of it as well. So we're trying to capture everything there is about, you know, environmental science and environmental studies. So we have an overview of things like classic environmental science, you know, environmental physics, soil systems, freshwater systems, ecology, but we're also interested in things like resource economics. How do you value things like pollination services? How do we think about, you know, water access and rights across, you know, different socio-economic groups, for example? And we're also interested in the planning system and how our policies affect our, you know, our conservation and our climate change goals and things like that as well. So we're really trying to cover all kind of 3 spheres of the environment, social and economic aspects, and that's so important to give us a broad overview of you know, solving problems that we have in our world today. So big topics, and I'll get onto some of the other modules a little bit later. We focus very much on a kind of building your technical skills and things like GIS and statistics, data management, and professional skills along that as well. And we try and apply these so that you've got a much improved understanding of things like climate change and biodiversity impact as well. So environment management really kind of pulls all of this together, so you get this holistic understanding of the environment that we live in, and how we can manage it, and how we can improve its welfare as well. The environmental management course is accredited by SIMA, which is a Chartered Institute of Water Environmental Management. So it's an accredited course. So once you finish that, you're partially accredited under that structure and under that organisation. And then if you want to later on go through consultancy work or any other kind of careers from that, you can finish off that accreditation as well. So that program in essence really gives you not just a theoretical and practical understanding, but also works towards some professional bodies that you can use to kind of heighten the impact that you have when you're looking for jobs as well. The environmental management course runs completely from Edinburgh, all 4 years of it. So we would have you there from start to finish on the degree. The wildlife and conservation management course is a little bit different. The first 2 years run at our Oak Ridge campus, which is out in West Lothian for the first 2 years or so. And then we bring you to Edinburgh to finish off the degree in years 3 and 4. It's slightly different. It has a much greater focus on wildlife and biodiversity management, kind of like inferred within the name. So the courses, the modules, the kind of education that we deliver, the skills that we impart are much more focused on things like habitat management, tourism, project management, ecology. But we do also filter in the professional and technical skills and statistics and using GIS, which is mapping systems fundamentally as well. So there's less of the resource economic kind of side of it and the social aspect, and much more in the conservation kind of component on that. It's not to say that you can't dip into those things. It's just that students tend to drift more towards one or the other, depending on your own interest as well. When you're kind of like learning, and when you have the cohorts, what you find is the environment management and the wildlife and conservation management students really overlap a lot. We kind of view you all as one big group of applied environmental scientists and ecologists fundamentally. So there's a lot of overlap between the two programs. It's really just in some of the module choices that you have a little bit later on that really just defines the changes there. But there's great flexibility in terms of what you can choose, and you can bounce back and forth between them as well. So hopefully that makes sense. I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview of the year structure. We have what we call a 2+2 system here at SRUC, which is quite a nice approach. It's a little bit different from a traditional degree where you start from 1 year and you move on across the 4. In the first 2 years, we undertake the HND and HNC approach. So that means if you're to leave after first year, if you leave after second year, perhaps to go and get a job, it would mean that you do exit with a qualification that you can take forward from there, rather than just a transcript of notes or a transcript of kind of courses as well. So you do actually have one kind of like consolidated award at the end of it if you wanted to exit early as well. So that's of great benefit, and then you get moved on to the BSc in years 3 and 4 as well. If you sign up for the degree, it's the same sort of thing. You're signed up for the full 4 years and you just flow from one to the other. If you sign up for the HNC or the HND, then it just means that we assume that you're taking it 1 or 2 years at a time. So year one, really year one of the course is very broad in scope. What we try and do is introduce you to a lot of different systems. You'll get an introduction to things like ecology. You'll get an introduction to things like freshwater environments, biodiversity conservation, the planning system, how we use our rural landscapes. You get an introduction to geology and soils, as well as some basic kind of like software IT and skills kind of training as well. So the first year is really just a kind of like scatter approach to get you up to speed on all of the aspects that you really need to understand to function as an upcoming environmental professional. That year kind of is capstoned by a project that we have usually on Arthur's Seat, where we design I won't spoil it for you, but we basically design a case study on Arthur's Seat. There's a project, and as environmental consultants you have to give us feedback on that, and that kind of captures your grades for that first year as well. So it's really kind of capturing everything. The second year, which is the HND, we have a big focus on technical learning and practice. So what we tend to do here is we really ramp up the labs, we really ramp up the things like the statistics, the mapping systems that we use, getting out, doing lots of practical field work, and really trying to build on the technical skills and learning and practice. So the first kind of year, we're trying to introduce you to a lot of the theory and a lot of the concepts, but you still do a lot of field work in there. And year two, we really really build on that, so you've got a really solid knowledge base in terms of going out, working with the environment, you doing data analysis, collecting samples as well, or thinking about different policy systems as well. So we really try and build you up into the second year. And again, that has a capstone project. You do your own little research project in second year, and then there is an exam as well that kind of covers most of the courses. So we bring everything together, and then you do a holistic project, and then a small exam near the end too. Then it kind of splits a little bit. The structure is slightly different in years 3 and 4. But for year 3, this is when you get the choice. If you've been doing environmental management and you've really enjoyed all the ecology stuff, you can then move into wildlife and conservation if you want. Or if you've been doing wildlife conservation, you can move to environmental management. There's a much greater choice in terms of the electives, the courses, the choices that you can make there. And what we try and do is encourage students to think about what they like and what they don't like, and then you can move into your own specialisms from there. And then you're going to have less courses to do, but you're really going to get to grips with it in terms of the knowledge acquisition, in terms of being able to put the skills that you've learned in the last couple of years into practice. So what you tend to find is that the content really ramps up in terms of specialisms going from there. And then year 4, the final year of the degree, a lot of this is building on things like professional research skills, professional kind of soft skills as well. So interviewing techniques. We focus on high-level thinking of biodiversity conservation. And then obviously you'll have a research project to do that covers the entirety of the year as well. So the 4th year, again, we do much less much less modules, but you really specialize and you're building on those professional skills. We get you geared up to leaving the degree with a really strong set of skills that you can bring into the workforce or even into further education as well. So yeah, the first couple of years is all about knowledge acquisition, specialisms and applications, and then kind of like ramping up so that you're leaving as an environmental professional at the end of it as well. So that's the broad year structure. So what kind of features do we have in the program? Really within the course itself, we make sure that we're student-centered. And what does this mean? It really means that we're focused on the learning that we're going to deliver to yourselves, and making sure that the flow of information from us to you is as accessible as it possibly can be, and as directed and as useful as well. The key thing about this program is that we tend not to have huge amounts of students or swaths of students. You're not going to be sitting in a lecture room of 300 people. You're not going to be some kind of like distant blurred face, in the back of a big lecture hall. So what you'll tend to find is that you'll be working in, cohorts of about maybe 30 odd or so. It's been the kind of trend over the last couple of years. And we get to know you. We usually most of the lecturers get to know you on kind of like first name terms. That sounds terrifying, but it allows us to get to understand, what your aspirations are, what kind of things that you like, where we can advise you for volunteering. So it's really important for us to be able to get to know yourselves, so that we can bring you forward on this educational journey as well. So when it's student-centered, what I mean is that we're focusing on yourselves in terms of improving you as an upcoming environmental scientists. We have a lot of different things in the way that we teach. We don't just sit in lectures. You'll be going on residential field trips across the years. There's lots of things such as workshops and seminars. So we'll bring in guest speakers to carry out different kind of like activities and workshops with you. They could be from Nature Scot or the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, or they could be from the Scottish Government, as an example as well. They could be from other kind of NGOs too. We also do quite a lot of visits, study tours. We have research outputs as well that you can get involved in. And so really the main focus is on this kind of third point where we have applied learning. We're not really that interested in just making things theoretical. We want you to go out and actually experience it. And that's really kind of shown in the pictures that we have here. So in the top left, we liaise with the Ranger Service going up to Arthur's Seat. You learn about the environments around that. We talk about the case studies that we're going to build. How is that going to affect both the ecological sustainability of those sites, but how is it going to impact people surrounding it in terms of their access to nature, the improvements that they can have to mental health, for example. You'll do a fair bit of labs as well. So you'll get experience in working in laboratories, looking at invertebrates. As an example, conducting water quality analysis tests, understanding how soil profiles work. So there's lots of different labs that we work with too. But also other things in terms of generating ideas for improving energy systems or ideas for improving kind of like audits for industrial processes. So in this one here, we get a whole load of Lego, we get some specialists coming up, and you design new systems to make businesses more sustainable, which is always really good fun. And there's nothing better than playing with Lego for an assessment as well. So those kind of things are really cool. We do speed dating in terms of policy analysis, that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, you're not just going to be sitting in a class, you will be doing stuff that is often used in real life. And of course, things like field trips. We like taking you out and understanding the environments that you might be working in the future from a first principle. So here's a picture of some students by a river. We're trying to understand the freshwater ecology there. What are the invertebrates like? Do we have a healthy population and diverse population of invertebrates here? So collecting water samples there, understanding if there's nutrient overloading. Do we have sensitive species there? What kind of bioindicators can they suggest about that particular stream system? And then what kind of policy decisions or conservation decisions can we glean from that as well? So you'll be thinking about the theory, but then going out and then actually applying that across the course as well. A little bit of an overview of the teaching and research team. We have a broad range of people that feed into the course. This is only a small snapshot of the staff that you'll interact with, but I'll just give you an overview of the range of experts that we have. As an example, we have Simon Gibson-Poole. He spends a lot of his time types of drones using GIS, these mapping systems and remote sensing. So Simon spends a lot of his time thinking about how we can take satellite data, we can take drone data, building up 3D models of stuff. Simon is really good at taking all this data and then creating habitat maps as an example. He's done some really interesting work looking at flying drones over the top of Bass Rock when all the gannets were quite ill, and then it turns out that gannets that are healthy are teardrop shaped, gannets that are unhealthy kind of like splash out like stars. And so you can fly drones across, get a computer to analyze the shape of these gannets, then count how many gannets are suffering from avian flu, for an example. So that's the kind of thing Simon likes doing. Also, counting the number of deer in a forest to look at tree damage using infrared cameras at night. Those kind of things are really cool. And you can get involved in all that kind of research and those kind of activities as well. We have Fiona McAuliffe, who is an ecologist by trade. She's really interested in wildlife conservation, incredibly practical and individual, really likes getting out in the field, developing field skills. You could be like bringing birds with her, kick sampling, all that kind of stuff, mammal trapping, those kind of things. And she has a special interest in white-tailed eagles and their interaction with things like land predation and farmers as well, which is really cool. So it's not just theoretical aspects of ecology, but things that are impacting Scotland right now. And there's been a few articles in the Guardian and the BBC that Fiona has directly contributed to as well on white-tailed eagles. So you should go and check that out if you're interested in bird ecology and highland ecology as well. Kind of moving away from the ecology side of things, and we also have a team of interdisciplinary experts too. So one of them would be Louise Mitchell, and she's very much interested in things like health and well-being and blue-green infrastructure. So how people connect with nature. So Louise has been working on projects such as how green landscapes can improve people's outcomes in terms of their health. So if you give good quality access to people who are recovering in hospital, how does that impact and speed up their recovery? How does it reduce the amount of stress that they have after surgery, those kind of things? And how do people feel about feel about nature as well. She's been doing some really interesting work with some of our students on, sustainable funerals as well. How do people think about, ecologically and environmentally friendly end of life kind of approaches too? So really interesting interdisciplinary and social kind of stuff as well, which is absolutely fascinating. What we tend to find is that half of our students will go into this kind of social research thing, and then half of them go into the ecology research because it's really interesting. So we have a team of experts surrounding that as well. And then there's myself. So I'm an environmental chemist by trade. I'm really interested in soil and water chemistry, particularly things like pollution. How does pollution move through the environment? How does it affect our microbes in the soil? How does it affect the plants? How can we then remediate contaminated land? And I'm also really interested in statistics too. I used to work at the Scottish Government as a statistician, and I teach a lot of the statistics. So you see from undergraduate all the way up to the kind of PhD cohort that we have. So I'm interested in modelling our environments and thinking about contaminated land very broadly as well. So we cover a lot of things, and as I mentioned, this is only a small peek into the kind of the research and teaching team that we have here. You're probably wondering at this point, what does a normal week look like? Well, on campus, you'll be there around 3 days a week. So you're there for about, half of the time actually doing stuff. It'll be a mixture of in-person and online activities as well. And we really focus on the doing, not the sitting. So we're really interested in getting you doing stuff. We'll maybe give a lecture for about 50 minutes, and then there'll be a workshop, an activity, some kind of tutorial. You go out and collect data. You'll be doing something, going on visits as an example. So at the top here, we've got a workshop on the go about connectedness to nature. We might take you out to look at some soil pits and understanding how soils are generated within Scotland. We have lots of interactive kind of workshops in terms of how stock environment Scotland affect the planning systems. And we also we do trips to the Scottish Parliament. You get to see planning proposals being debated live, and you get to be part of that in terms of the back and forth with it as well. So we have time off on Wednesday afternoons, so you don't get taught on Wednesday afternoons. That's there for sports and extra kind of like curricular activities. We have agreements with the University of Edinburgh on campus that you can join in their sports teams, for example, as well as SRUC's own ones too. So there's a lot of time to do those extra things as well as space for self-study and writing up your essays as well. So yeah, you're in about 3 days overall across the week, and you'll be doing things while you're there. You won't just be sitting in lectures, field trips, other sort of stuff as well. What does year one look like? Well, this is a timetable for this year's year one. Now you're probably thinking it's quite busy, but it's there's kind of like repeated themes across the year. In term one, we might be focusing on things like ecology and ecosystems, environmental awareness, biodiversity, conservation. The things that are in italics there are kind of the optional electives that you get a choice from. And so yeah, you can see that you're in usually for full days, and in first term you'd be off on a Wednesday and a Friday. Second term you're probably off on a Wednesday, and you'd be in perhaps part days, depending on what you choose. Fridays off on a term 3 as well, again on different mornings depending on what you're going to pick as well. You notice that things like ecology pop up all the time. Ecology is a really strong theme, so what we tend to find is that we run the theory in term 1, and then because that's in the middle of winter and there's not much going on ecologically, then we tend to do more field trips every so often, maybe once a month or so, on the Monday mornings across the year, when the wildlife in Britain is starting to wake up again after the winter. So you're not going to be in. It's not as busy as it looks, but we do have some things that are spread across the year, depending on how appropriate it is, and to look at things like flower identification across the year as well. So that's fundamentally what the first year kind of timetable looks like. And if you're interested in learning a bit more, let me know. I can give you more information about how the days actually work. But they're generally split into two kind of halves, in the morning and an afternoon session. What kind of work are you going to be doing? You know, what kind of assessments, what kind of stuff are you going to be handing in? Lots of different types. We do things like practicals. You will have to do an alkalinity titration in a chemistry lab, as an example. You'll have to measure phosphate in soils and in water, and the outcomes from that will be part of your assessment. So practicals are part of it. You might also be doing things like interview or kind of like case study things as well. You'll have the classic essays and reports. We do things like posters. We've had paintings as well in some of our assignments. In one of our third year modules, you literally have to paint your vision for a new landscape, or draw it and sketch it out. So for those of you interested in art, that's a really fun thing to do, that we do for our kind of landscape conservation courses a little bit later. There's presentations, there's exams. We also run COP negotiations, which is the negotiations that we have on our climate every year or so. So you actually sit down, we give you a brief, you have to then generate the new climate policy for the world based on the information that you know. We then throw in a spanner to the works. I don't know, the US has decided to pull out of the COP agreements and they're taking a trillion dollars out of it. What are you going to do now? How are you going to change these things? We actually have simulated events as assessments as well. We've also had things like podcasts and tweets, or X's as they might be known now, and as part of the assessment. So you're not just going to be sitting there writing, you're going to be doing things that you're probably going to be doing in the workplace as well. Sometimes you have debates as part of it too, which are all very useful skills. And again, just really pulling you forward and trying to give you those skills that are really essential in the workplace as well, or at least being able to effectively communicate. We do residential field trips. We have they fluctuate and change every year, but we have two ones that have been running for the last couple of years continuously, mainly based on the electives that the students choose. We have one in third year, a field studies module. This is either in Millport or the Cairngorms. It lasts for 5 days. We take you away to a residential field centre. You design your own projects while you're there. You do some projects where we're working with you as well. Everything's paid. It's full board, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All the transportation's included, all the accommodation. So it's not something that you have to pay extra fees for. And yeah, you spend 5 days with the staff and all your peers. It's really good fun. Just going out and surveying environments down at the beach, down in woodlands. We do things like small mammal trapping, and you, at the end of that, each day you end up taking the data, analysing it, thinking about what it means, and at the end of it you do a presentation based on a project that you've designed, and you write up that project as like a little mini research one as well. So it's really good fun, and there's lots of kind of like activities at the end of the day. People are playing loads of games and that sort of stuff as well. So it's not just good from an educational point, but it's really good fun as well, for everyone to kind of like chill out and get together. Kind of as a cohort too, so that's really good fun. And then in year 4, there's a marine ecology course that we run. It runs out at SAMS, which is the marine centre out near Oban. So you go up there for 4 days. You focus on a whole load of things from ecology, biodiversity, environmental science, policy, a whole load of stuff there. And you work not just with the staff at SRUC, and we focus on coastal communities, but also with SAMs who are also interested in deep ocean systems as well. So it's really good fun. Liaising with this professional organisation to augment some of your learnings too. We organise, well, Les Ashley, who's one of our lecturers, has been organising some extra field trips as well across the year. You've probably heard of things like Operation Wallacea, so he helps students get funding for that, and those usually happen outside of SRUC over the summer, but we really promote those kind of things as well. And each year we look in first and second year to think about what kind of other kind of trips, what the other kind of activities we run as well. So residential field trips are part of the course as well, where we get to take you away and really immerse you in the environments that we work in. And we're also always interested in exploring kind of international field trips as well, but we do have to be careful of our carbon footprint. So quite a lot of the ones that we run are done in Scotland. To focus you on the ecology and the landscapes that we have here, which you're probably going to be working in, and also to be as sustainable as we possibly can be as well. And then the last kind of thing, or one of the last kind of things, as we move across the years, is that you'll be undertaking research projects, and this is often the kind of pinnacle of the program, really, where the students or yourselves as prospective students, you'll be thinking about what things you have liked, what things you haven't liked, and then kind of working towards a research project that you're interested in, a topic that's really close to your heart. So here's some of the projects that we've had either this year or the last couple of years. So we had a student that was looking at the nesting habitat of rare bee species in the Cairngorms. We've had students looking at carbon stocks of forests using drones, so creating 3D maps of forests to try and understand, what the shape of the trees are, and then we can work out how much carbon's in the trees, and then we can work out, how much carbon storage we have within these new woodlands that are being created. That's pretty cool. We had a student, a really interesting subject this year, looking at sustainable funeral options and how accepting people are at more environmentally friendly kind of routes to end of life, kind of like aftercare. So wet cremations versus kind of traditional ones, or using kind of more eco-friendly materials. How do people feel about that? Do people feel like it's slightly more distasteful, or are people more ecologically kind of like minded in that sense, and they want more sustainable options? So really cool bits of research that's coming out. One that started last year, but unfortunately we didn't quite manage to get it going due to the student deferring, but we're hopefully coming back to this one in the next couple of years, is the impact of Loch Lomond wallabies. For those of you who didn't know, there's wallabies in an island in Loch Lomond, and they're thinking about getting evicted elsewhere. But we don't really know what the impact is going to be of wallabies being released in other areas of Scotland. Because they all live on one little island. So there was a really interesting kind of like idea for a project to go out there to look at how the wallabies are affecting different plants and different parts of the vegetation on the different islands. And then because they're on some of the little islands on Loch Lomond and not others, we can do this really nice comparison as well. Other kind of ones, looking for impacts for environmental education. Where do we need to go forward in the future? How can we train or at least give knowledge to children in schools in order to benefit kind of environmental and sustainable thinking, and then other kind of stuff like mental health benefits of green spaces and how people interact with those as well. The diagram that you can see on the right hand side comes from this first project here, looking at rare bee species in the Cairngorms, and this student ended up taking the research to the rare invertebrates in the Cairngorms project, which is run by the RSPB, and creating this fantastic map which shows where habitat suitability will be for this particular small bee. And this research is currently undergoing reviews for publication as well. So the impacts that you have and the projects that you can generate could potentially actually have a real impact in professional scientific journals, and also to policies by big NGOs like the RSPB and the Cairngorms as well. So we really value the research that you do, and we try and promote that outwards as knowledge exchange for the local communities and the stakeholders that you might have been working with as well. So it's not just an academic exercise. We're interested in feeding this information back to the people that are impacted by it as well. And then the employment destinations, kind of thing that you're interested in, what kind of jobs can we get from this? There's a huge amount, really. We've had people working for the RSPB as land agents, biologists. This is all in the last couple of years. Biologists at the Australian Wildlife Expedition, education officers for Edinburgh Council, various positions in the Scottish Government, working in things like marine policy or the rural policy kind of like centres, or maybe working as kind of data analysts as well. We've had some of the classics, people working as countryside rangers for Historic Environment Scotland, or the Loch Lomond and the Trossachs environmental consultants. So some like we have here, going out and giving advice on how environmental changes might work. And we have students that have gone on to be laboratory analysis for SEPA and private kind of companies as well. And then quite a few of our students go on to do masters and further kind of studies as well. This is a cohort of some of our students have then gone on to do some PhD studies as well, both within SRUC and out with it, depending on how much they enjoyed the research projects and how far they want to take it, and so we can support it across all different avenues as well. So the employment destinations are very broad. And we usually try and get the fourth year students to think about what do they want to do, and then the dissertation, that honours project, that research that we do, we curate it to an end point that they want, so they can use that almost as a portfolio, as proof in their CVs for those kind of jobs as well. So really, I'm going to wrap up here, and I'll kind of let people ask any kind of questions. In terms of environmental studies at SRUC, both the programs, environmental management and wildlife and conservation management, they're very vocational, they're very flexible, and we really focus on a modern curriculum. We're not just a theoretical kind of course. You will be getting out and learning the theoretical knowledge, but also those critical practical skills as well, in order to make sure that you're effective and valuable for a range of different jobs as well. We have a very large and kind of like wide-spanning range of staff as well across the organisation, both in research, consultancy, and within teaching too. And we have some excellent links with industry, NGOs, and the wide environment sector as well. And one of the nice things that I'll kind of finish on there is that we have this year-on-year-on progression. You can exit at any year after successful completion with a qualification if you want to, and then come back from that side. So I think, if you're interested in environmental studies, you want to work as an environmental professional, under that very broad umbrella that I've been talking about, I think SRUC is a fantastic place to go to, because we have those such strong links with our natural systems and our environments, and we really try and make sure that what we deliver to you is valid, so that you're going out there with not just the theoretical skills but the practical knowledge in order to be successful in those kind of endeavours going forward. So I've been talking for quite a long time now, and I realise that's a lot of information there. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you now.
Great, thank you, Andrew. So a couple of questions have come through. Firstly, what is a typical class size? How many people tend to be in a class size from first year to fourth year?
Yeah, good question. Typical class size tends to range from about 20 to 30, depending. That's the core kind of courses. So about 20 to 30. So not too large. Sometimes we co-teach with some of our other students, so your class sizes might balloon out a little bit, maybe to about 60 or 70, depending on that course. We run a kind of cross-program kind of like data analysis course. So you might have larger kind of cohorts there as well, but mostly about 20 to 30 there. Yeah, I would say across the years. As you get into third and fourth year, and as you start to specialise and move out, the class sizes might be a little bit smaller, depending on how you choose how you choose the courses. So you might end up with, cohorts of maybe 15 or so, which actually works quite well, because then it means that we can there's a lot more one-to-one interaction with you there.
Tremendous. And next question is, what is the accommodation like in Edinburgh when you start in third year?
So SRC, we don't have any accommodation, specific accommodation that is SRC owned ourselves. So what we do is we let you take advantage of the kind of like private sector. That way we can help out with that. We do have the faculty office, which can direct you to some of the local providers, and we can give you advice on kind of like areas of Edinburgh that are quite popular as well. There's accommodation right around the corner. There's student accommodation right around the corner of King's Buildings that I know a lot of our students like to use, but. Yeah, that's the main accommodation, is the kind of like private sector itself. If you have any kind of more specific questions about that, you're more than welcome to reach out to us, and we can kind of advise you a little bit more about what that would be like.
I've also got here, my daughter has autism but would love to study WCM. What support is there?
I love support. I'd probably say maybe about 40% of our students have a student support profile. Um, and we're very accommodating in that kind of sense. As I said, the focus is on the students as well. So in the first year when we bring everyone in terms of welcome week, we try and we set everyone up with a year tutor, and then one of the first things that we do is to identify if anyone does have any kind of student support needs, and we put in place things like extra time. For example, we often have students that might have concerns around things like ADHD, and they might want to see if they can get help with a diagnosis for that. So we help facilitate those kind of things. We have educational psychologists that we work with, and then obviously we have support and changes for things like extra time in class and those kind of things as well. It's kind of hard to describe generically, because what we tend to do is set people up with the learning support team, and then we tailor people's adjustments depending on their needs, whatever that might be. So yeah, we've had many students along various different kind of like spectrums of all kind of walks of life that have been successful in the studies overall.
Amazing. And can you take a gap year partway through your studies?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You just tell us that you want to defer for a year and take a gap year, and that's fine. That's totally fine. Um, some of our students do that quite a lot for various things. We've had students that go off on maternity leave, as an example. Some of the students go off on gap years. Yeah, it's not a problem. It's absolutely not a problem. The only thing that I would say is that we do revalidate our programs about every 5 years or so. So if you went away for a long gap year, I don't know if that would be counted as a gap year more than a big hiatus, you'd have to return within a certain time frame. Otherwise, the program that you originally signed up to might have revalidated and been changed at that point. You get put back on the program, but the courses and some of the courses might have changed at that point. But yeah, the gap years are quite common, to be honest, and people do come and go as their life evolves.
And the next question here, are these courses Scottish only or are they relevant to the international market?
Oh, definitely to the international market. I mean, we focus a lot of the practical kind of activities on the systems that we have in Scotland. But yeah, we focus, but we also like talk about the broader changes. A lot of the stuff that we talk about in climate is on developing countries, places like sub-Saharan Africa as well, where they have like real issues with things like soil salinization, and we think about broader resource economics around those kind of systems too. So yeah, there's kind of like a big focus on the kind of wider and international kind of aspects. And what I would say, if you're doing river sampling or soil sampling, or you're trying to do any kind of ecological kind of activities within Scotland, a lot of that is so transferable into other systems. If you're doing some kind of like bird survey, you just get a book of the local birds in that tropical rainforest that you're going to as well. And a lot of the staff that work here have also worked in different kind of environments. Les, for example, worked extensively in South Africa, and has a lot of knowledge about kind of different systems. So we do tend to have a more pragmatic focus in Scotland, but you can absolutely take the stuff that you've learned here and apply it elsewhere, as we have with our international students.
Super. Next question, can you get funding for years 3 and 4 if you've already had funding for both the HNC and HND?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So you just apply to SAS. So the idea is that you have roughly 4 years worth of funding across your initial education. So yep, that's fine. If you do a direct entry into years 3 and 4, yeah, that's fine, as long as you've not spent those kind of like credits, if you want to think of it that way, elsewhere. Then yep. Quite a lot of our students, not a lot of our students, sorry, but we definitely get direct entries that do that. So you just need to let our admissions team know, and also SAS know as well.
Okay, and the next one says, I'm not particularly fit. Would I struggle to keep up on field trips?
Oh, that's yeah, absolutely. We're not scaling mountains or anything like that. Yeah, completely. A lot of the stuff that we do is made to be accessible when we're on the field trips. So the where we do the freshwater sampling, you could get a wheelchair along there as well. The stuff that we do, the coastal things, yeah, absolutely. There's no expected fitness requirements in a lot of cases as well. And yeah, a lot of the field work and stuff that we do is really quite accessible by design as well. So yeah, that's not an issue.
Okay. And the next one is I got an A in geography at school, but I don't have a science. Would I still be okay to apply?
Yeah, definitely. The best thing to do is go for the applications. Those kind of questions often come to me and the team if the admissions team are not too sure, and then we kind of look at your transcript, your background, all that kind of stuff, and make a holistic appraisal. So absolutely, there's no harm um, in not applying in that kind of sense as well. And we've had students who have lots of experience in other kind of areas, but not necessarily in the environmental spheres. But they can bring that forward as well. We also you we often teach, and especially in year one, we don't assume any kind of like prior knowledge, so we bring you up to speed as well. If you feel like you've got kind of like holes in different areas of your learning originally.
Great. And the next one, could you apply for and then start a BSc on environmental management and then change to wildlife and conservation management after the first 2 years?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yep, that's not a problem. You might find that some of some of the prerequisites and some of the stuff that you might have learned in the first 2 years might be slightly different. So in some courses, there might be a slightly steeper learning curve if you've not covered as much in one thing rather than another. But yeah, absolutely, and we do get students doing that as well. So some of them, they end up finding out that they love the social aspect or they love the conservation aspect, and they want to move from one to the other. And yeah, that's totally fine. Totally fine.
And the next one here, can you give some examples of some dissertations?
Mm. Yeah, so the kind of dissertation stuff were the ones that I was kind of chatting about earlier. These are all dissertations. Other ones that we have this year, so two that I'm supervising. One of them is looking at if you have a river sort of system, they don't have many trees. Trees are really important for adding in things like nutrients and food and changing the kind of biotic dynamics. So the Forth River Trust, this is working in conjunction with the Forth River Trust, what trees are um, best used to, or what trees are best to plant in these kind of like bare, unforested areas. So we've got a student looking at the different types of leaf litter from different species, and then looking at how they're degraded, what kind of things that they release into the environment, how quickly they're degraded. So, and then to inform, what kind of tree species might be beneficial based on the leaf litter that's falling into the rivers. So that's one that we're doing this year. We have, there's another student that's working with me looking at the effect of metals, so toxic elements such as lead and zinc and cadmium, how they affect the different microbial communities within a mine tailing environment. And then what happens if you try and remediate those soils? Do you get better, more diverse microbial populations? So that's two examples. We have a student again looking at kind of similar to this one, bees in the Cairngorms. We have a student that's looking at bees in Tiree, looking at what the environmental factors are in terms of dictating when the bees may or may not emerge from a system. So there's a student looking at that one. There's a student looking at mapping flood risks from beaver activities, which is pretty cool. We've got a student looking at the environmental impacts of artificial intelligence. They use a lot of water. We need a lot of servers. So we've got a student working on that one. There's another student looking at the waste and recycling efficiencies and policies within Falkirk. So that's another one there. Yeah, there's lots of different stuff spanning lots of different things. We've had students do stuff internationally as well. We've had students do looking at projects in Fiji. We had that one last year where they were interested in understanding local uptake to coral reef rehabilitation in Fiji as well. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, lots of different kind of like projects there. The way that dissertations work is that generally we ask you what you're interested in, and then we look to see if we can generate a viable kind of project from that.
Okay, and there's just one more question here. If there are any more questions, this is the time, so please do pop them in the chat. The last one I've got here is both courses sound really good. I genuinely don't know which one to choose between. What kind of advice would you give?
Ah, okay. What a good dilemma to be in, eh? It it really kind of depends. I'd say environmental management is a good one to go for in the first case because we cover all three kind of pillars there where we look at the environment and we look at the classical things. You will be learning about, you know, ecology, you will be learning about freshwater systems, you will learn about biodiversity conservation, the wildlife management aspects of it. But we also feed in the social and the rural and the economic aspects to it as well. So you get a bit of a flavour for all of those things. The wildlife and conservation management program, you don't get as much of the social kind of aspects to it or the economic ones. So you're kind of missing out on that lens. But the nice thing about it is that, you know, as you go through these programs, as you probably found out in most cases, it's a lot easier to find out what you don't like rather than what you do like. So, you know, if you're going through something and you're just like, oh, I really am not that interested in Andrew's lectures and soils, but I tell you what's really interesting is how the planning system makes these big changes in terms of our, you know, electrical infrastructure and how we think about renewable energy and power. You know, power transmissions and how we link up, you know, cities to new hydroelectric schemes and solar farms. That could be something that interests you. And so I would probably recommend going for the environmental management course initially because it gives you that broad overview and you can start thinking about the things that you like and you don't like as well. Whereas the WCM one is more specialized, but it's a little bit more restricted in terms of the exposure that you get.
Fantastic, that's great advice. And I'll just give that one more refresh. I think that's all the questions we have. So thank you everybody for attending tonight. If you've got any questions, you'll have my email address from sending the link out tonight, so please feel free to get in touch. And Andrew, thank you very much for that presentation. That was really interesting. And yeah, have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. See you later. Bye-bye.